Welcome to the show, everybody. If you are just tuning in, you're tuning in to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Mubaraka Ibrahim, and this is Mornings with Mubaraka on WNHHLP 103.5, also streaming live for you on TuneIn Radio, as well as the New Haven Independent Facebook page. We are on Periscope. We are on StreamMe. We are actually a lot of different places, so hopefully you are able to tune in no matter where you are. Today is a wonderful Wednesday morning. I mean, like, the weather is so perfect today. I wish that I could actually stream live from my backyard because it is a beautiful, beautiful day. But we are still streaming live from the Beaver Hills section of New Haven, Connecticut, and I want to welcome you to the show. So, as you see today, it is a talkback show. It is me talking to you and you talking to me, and we are talking today about change. So what is it about change that makes it hard? And what is it that can make it a little less painful for us to make that change, no matter what we want that change to be? So we start this journey of change constantly and over again, right? Every year, New Year's resolutions, even though we have a new wave of, oh, I don't do resolutions. We have, the statistics tell us that 80% of people actually do still make New Year's resolutions. And why do we make those resolutions? We make them mainly because we want to change. We want to change something about what we're doing. We want to change something about our lifestyle. We want to set new goals and know that with those goals come a change in habit. So today what we are going to attempt to dive into is, what is it that makes change so hard? And what are some of the things that we can do to actually make change a little easier? And I'm going to give you several recommendations based on the science, based on experience, based on coaching people through business and through health and wellness. And hopefully you will have a little tip or a little motivation to make that first step in change. So the first thing that I always remind people is, making a change is not actually that hard. It is creating the first step to that change. That is what makes everything so hard, right? So change doesn't take a long time. What takes a long time is making the decision to make that change. That is where the crux of the problem lies. So when we talk about change, let's talk about change in some of the ways that people tend to want to make the biggest changes, right? Lots of people want to change their health. Lots of people want to change their wealth or their financial situation. A lot of people want to change their careers and their jobs. Those are some of the things that people look at when they want to make major changes in their life, because we associate those things with better happiness. And that may or may not be true, depending on where you are in your life. So one of the things about change is we have to first recognize the habits that we are doing that we have to stop, and that we have to add to that change. And that is the hardest part, because everything that we do is a collection of habits. We are a collection of habits. So we like to think like, oh, I am who I am because this is how I was raised, or I am who I am because this is just me. But the honest truth is, anything that you are is simply a collection of habits. When someone says, well, this person is a really happy person, right? Or this person is a really positive person. We are really referring to just their actions that are habitual, that gives us the idea that they are that type of person. So if you're not a person that's really positive, what are the things that you need to change in your habits to give you a positive outlook on life, to give you a happier outlook on life. And that really is truly a collection of habits. When we create these habits, they are created not just in our mind, but in our environment, a reaction of the emotional reaction of the way that we were raised, the people that we are around. So some of the really interesting things that I always find really interesting is how much our environment and the people that we surround ourselves actually increases or decreases what we're doing in our life and where we are doing it in our life. So for example, there's lots of evidence that if you have overweight friends and family, you are more likely to be overweight. So let me give you a disclaimer. I am not suggesting that you ditch your friends and family. I am suggesting that you might want to add to them. So why is that? Why is that the people that we are around really in many ways help dictate our lifestyle and our outlook? And I'm sure you probably heard, or maybe not, that there's a saying that says your income is the average of your 5 closest friends. Your 5 closest friends in your circle, that's the average of your income. So if you are surrounded by the closest people to you, always struggle with money, they have no financial literacy, they are really living paycheck to paycheck, you might want to add to your circle, right? Because we tend to learn and feed off of the people that we surround ourselves with. The same comes with health and wellness, right? So it's not just about through osmosis you're going to pick up bad habits. It's hey, let's get together and hang out. And if most of the people in your circle feels like the ultimate hangout is going to a restaurant and, eating dinner and having a 5-course meal, then you're more likely to do that habitually, as opposed to if you are in a circle of friends and the ultimate hangout is going for a hike or going skiing or golfing, you're more likely to be more active. So the first thing when we talk about change, we really want to talk about kind of like the environment that we surround ourselves in when we say we want that change, and how we can take steps in order to change that environment. So that is actually probably the first step when we talk about change. Let's talk about change in terms of how those habits are formed, how they're learned, and how they're unlearned. So you've probably heard 100 times, probably 1,000, just like I have, that a habit is formed in 21 days. So here's the interesting thing about that is, where did that come from, right? So if you're like me and you've tried to change a habit and be consistent for 21 days, and then on day 22, you're not doing that thing anymore. You're like, am I just a failure, or does a habit take longer than 21 days? So here's the interesting thing. So here's a little bit of history around that particular philosophy. So that philosophy was actually developed by a plastic surgeon. And his name was Maxwell Maltz. And he wrote a book back in the 1930s, because what he discovered was that, or what he observed, not discovered, what he observed is that when he did plastic surgery for his patients, if they got a new nose, or if they got an eye lift, or if they got liposuction, and he physically changed their physical appearance, it took them about 21 days in order for them to adjust to the new appearance. And so he wrote a book, and he said it takes 21 days to develop a habit, the habit of seeing yourself as this new person. And that just kind of got picked up with people who end up being really great personal development people, like Zig Ziglar, and it just caught like wildfire, and we still say that today. But here is what's interesting about it is that researchers have actually done research and say, like, how long does it really take people to change a habit, to make a new habit in their activity? And here's what they found. it actually can take a little bit less or a little bit more. So what researchers did is that they tracked people who subjectively or decided themselves that this is the habit that I'm going to try to adopt. And what they found was the easier the thing was to do, something like drinking water every day, the quicker they were able to develop the habit. And the habit being developed means you go from doing it intentionally to it becoming automated, right? So how long does it take you to develop that habit? When it was something that was a little bit more difficult in terms of how much energy expenditure that they had to do. So for example, someone who says, I'm going to do 50 push-ups a day, or I'm going to walk a mile a day. It took longer for them to develop habits that required more energy expenditures. So that means that the range really was really vast. Anywhere from 18 days to 264 days, with an average being somewhere around 60 days. So when you say that you're going to develop a habit, it really behooves you to think of it in a longer term, not just 21 days. Think about what you want to do and how are you going to develop that so that it becomes automated, right? But here is the other thing about developing a habit, which I think is really interesting. Not only can we develop good habits, but we can also develop very bad habits in that same manner, right? So if you are doing something over and over again for months at a time and it's not beneficial to you, then you are developing a bad habit in the same way that you can develop a good habit. But the good news is you can always replace that. So here's another good tip about developing a habit. Just as a side note, what we do as human beings is think of your habits really in terms of kind of like puzzle pieces, right? So the habits that you have create the puzzle of you. If you are going to take away a bad habit, you're going to leave an empty space there. So you need to intentionally add in a good habit. You can crowd out bad habits by adding in good habits. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about crowding, about that as a philosophy of creating habits. We're going to talk a little bit about that later in the show. So I wanted to know a little bit more about kind of like, what are the habits that you are trying to adopt, that you're having a challenge with? And so I sent out a message earlier today and I got a couple of responses for people who want to know, how do they develop a habit? One person asks, how does she develop a habit of confidence, right? So confidence is perception, right? How you perceive yourself. So here's a thing that I think is like a little tongue-in-cheek funny, right? Have you ever met somebody who you thought they were incredibly awkward, right? You really didn't see, like, why they were so confident, but they were just amazingly confident. And you weren't attracted to them because of any particular attribute. You're just kind of like fascinated that, wow, this person is really confident and has absolutely no reason to be. Everybody in America, we know somebody like that. Okay? We know somebody. Everybody knows the same person that's like that. I'll leave it at that. No reason to be confident. Even confidence in the wrong stuff. But really confident. So how do you develop that type of confidence about you? Again, it's about really your habits and your perception, right? So this is a combination of two things. We have, as human beings, the ability to change our body with our mind and change our mind with our body, right? So there is a sort of cart before the horse and horse before the cart. Sometimes we get in our head so much negativity that our body responds to that negativity. And sometimes what happens in our body is responding in our mind. Ultimately, we want our mind to be strong enough to direct the body and not vice versa. So, when we talk about confidence, we want to talk about what is the perception and the things that are happening around you that you can change to boost your confidence. And it really is about how you view the world. So there's a saying that life is not about what happens, right? It's about how you perceive what happens. I'll give you an example. Let's take a scenario that I like to take. So a woman has a huge presentation at work. She knows this is a super important presentation. Her and her partner is supposed to present together to corporate, and she oversleeps in the morning. A person who is less optimistic, right, and less confident about themselves, she oversleeps. Her alarm clock never goes off. Her cat comes and licks her in the face, and this is what wakes her up. She gets up, she gets dressed, rushes and gets dressed, grabs her coffee, runs out the door, gets in her car, get ready to go to work, but she's late, so she runs into massive traffic before she gets to work, which is making her even later. And when she got there, the presentation was over and her partner had to do it for the both of them. And the negative person will say to the partner, "Oh my God, I cannot believe that I overslept this morning. I overslept and that stupid cat comes and licks me in the face. And so I'm waking up with cat saliva all over my face. I get up, I got dressed as quickly as I could. And then I get into traffic and oh my goodness, the traffic was horrendous, which made me even later and I missed the entire presentation. This was just like the worst morning ever." That really sounds like a really bad morning. Sounds like everything went wrong. But let's flip the script, right? Another way of a more optimistic outlook on that exact same series of situations is she gets to work and she tells her partner, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that my alarm clock didn't go off. But thank goodness for my cat Tabby, because she actually woke me up. She licked me and woke me up. She must have knew that I had to come to work and get this presentation done. I got dressed as quickly as I could. I ran into traffic. I couldn't actually get out of it in time, but I'm so grateful that you knew both of our works and you were able to give the presentation and do it despite the fact that I was really late this morning, so thank you." Right? That really kind of changes the way that you view the situation. It's not what has happened, it's how you view what has happened, right? So confidence and optimism and positivity work sort of kind of like the same way. It's really the way you view how you interact with the world and how the world interacts with you. You want to make sure that you really take a mental check-in. So when I say a mental check-in, like when you are thinking about where you are in your life, right? Why are you thinking that way? What is the things that you can change in the way that you think and the way that you look at a situation that's going to help you be more positive in that outlook? Be more confident in your ability to achieve, right? So confidence isn't always knowing that I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. Confidence is, you know what? Even if I don't know how to do this, I'm going to figure it out. That's confidence, right? So it's not being a know-it-all. It's knowing that you have the ability to achieve as opposed to just knowing everything. Because it's okay for you to say, "I don't know," but, I'll find out. That's part of it. When we talk about developing the habit of confidence, it is really a conscious effort. So how do we start creating conscious efforts to change habits? When we talk about changing habits, I always like to think about beginning with the end in mind. What are the habits that you need to form in order for you to get to the goal that you have achieved, right? Whether that is changing your outlook on life, whether it is changing your health, whether it's changing your financial situation, whatever that is, break it down in small goals. So here, let's talk a little bit about how what we do is going to change how our outlook on life is, and then change our actions. And if you are just tuning in, then you're tuning in to WNHHLP 103.5 FM on your radio dial. We are streaming live from the Beaver Hill section of New Haven, Connecticut on WNHHLP. Also on TuneIn Radio, as well as Periscope and Facebook and Stream Me and a whole bunch of other platforms that I can't remember. So no matter where you are, no matter whether or not you're going from your car into your office or your office into your car, you can always just switch over and tune in. And then if you miss any part of the show, you can find us on SoundCloud and iTunes as an archive podcast. Just look for WNHHLP and then Mornings with Mubaraka. Today we are talking about change of habits, change of outlook, and how do we make those changes. So when we talk about change, it first starts with your thought, right? So what we think, human beings, we have amazing brains. Our brains are absolutely amazing. And what those brains can do is it can actually cause a physiological response. So just what you're thinking can change the way your body chemicals are secreted, the way your hormones are interacting, and that can cause a physical reaction. So I'll give you an example. So I got in a car accident once. It was kind of like a fender bender, not super serious, but anytime you get, hit in a car accident, you're going to be really, really jarred. And one thing that I noticed over the next several months is every time that I came to that same corner where my accident was, I would immediately start feeling very anxious. And I actually didn't realize why that was for a while. So this is one of those kind of like environmental triggers, right? That triggered an emotional response. And I was wondering, I'm sitting at the light one day and I'm like, why am I just feeling so anxious right now? Like, I'm just feeling everything is tensing up. And I realized that I was at the corner that I had the accident at. And so that was an environmental trigger. And so from then on, when I would come to that corner, because I passed it quite often, I would recognize that corner caused me to have anxiety. And I would, one, make sure that I was driving very safely. Even though I don't think the accident was my fault, I have to say that. It wasn't my fault. But I made sure that I was driving very safely, and I would breathe. I would practice some breathing techniques because I understood that those things for me could help calm my anxiety. And I did that every time until now. I no longer have anxiety when I'm at that corner. Because that thought created an emotional reaction, which then created a physiological response in my body, right? So that's one way habits happen. Another way that habits happen is you actually create the response, the body motion, which then turns into an emotion, which then turns into a thought. So I'll give the example of drinking water, right, as a health habit. You're doing a physical action, and in your mind, you know drinking water is healthy. And so it makes you feel like you are actually accomplishing something that is going to improve your health, which is then going to create a mental thought of, I am having healthy habits, right? So now you have a body action, a physical action that creates an emotion, that creates a thought, right? So those are two ways for you to go about creating or relearning and unlearning a habit. So let's talk about like some specific techniques. What are some of the specific techniques around habit building and how you can create healthier habits? So I'm going to talk about 4 different techniques. One that are all scientifically based, and certainly I've used them with clients in the past and at very successful. So the first technique, and let me say this before I get into the techniques. The techniques are really individualized, right? So I deal with clients in various different ways, from business to branding to health and wellness. And really the technique depends on where you are in your life, knowing yourself, what type of person you are and what you can stick to, and sometimes how much support and accountability that you have around what you are doing. So those are things that you want to consider. And I also, again, talking about developing health habits, as we did earlier in the show, you don't want to try these things for a week, time for 2 weeks. Really stick to them for at least 40 to 60 days before you say, okay, let me try a different way of doing this. So the first way of developing a new habit is really starting small. And I mean really small. One of the things that encourages us as human beings is obviously being successful, right? Having success in what you are doing. So this is one of the reasons why people may start an exercise program that they've Googled or a diet that they've Googled, and they do it for a couple of weeks and they see no result and then they stop, right? So this is one of the reasons why that when you train with a coach or a trainer or a dietitian, we really make a lot of effort to make sure that you're seeing results right away, because that's going to encourage you to stick to the program. So may not be an overnight transformation, but you need to see some type of results, right? Some type of improvement right away in what you are doing, right? So I really love to see people make change that results in something, even if it's 5 pounds, right? You want to see that. You don't want to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to see results for a month. The same thing, I remember when first diving into personal finance, and I was following Bill Ramsey, which I think is awesome, who gives awesome financial advice. If you don't follow him, you can go follow him. And his philosophy in financing, when you're going to reduce your debt, is don't start with your big bill. Actually start with your smallest bill. Pay off the smallest bill. So even if it's you owe $20 to your copay for your doctor, start off with the small things, because once you see success, it's going to encourage you and it's going to propel you to keep going. So start really small. So that's one philosophy, right? I have used this philosophy with women who have eating addictions, right? Or women who are morbidly obese that have really bad health habits. Not starting with something huge, but literally small. So let's talk about this week. The only goal is not to change anything else. You don't have to go out and exercise. You don't have to go and, throw away everything out your cabinet. Your goal this week may be just drink half your body weight in ounces of water every day. It's also a technique that I use when clients are going through a lot of really stressful things in their life and they really can't focus on a lot of things at once. Sometimes you have to step back and you have to start from the beginning until you build up to where you were. So the momentum of starting small will begin. Think of it kind of like a snowball effect, right? You're going to start really small and then you're going to start building on it and building on it. So your first week or 2, or maybe even the first 30 days, depending on where you are, your only goal may be, I'm going to drink half my body weight in ounces of water. Or if you're already a great water drinker, you may say, my only goal is every single day, I'm just going to eat a cooked green vegetable, right? Just taking those little habits. If exercise is a big thing for you, you may want to say, you know what? I'm not going to get up and exercise for 30 minutes because that's not realistic for where I am in my life. But every day I'm going to walk around my block. And that walk will eventually extend to other things. So I've used this in lots of different ways, even in my own life. So, there was a time where I was like, I want to create a habit of reading Quran every day. So for people who are not Muslim, the Quran is the Islamic holy book, right? And so the goal that I made for myself was every day I'm going to read one verse, right? So if I was able to get to that one verse, then I feel accomplished. But what happens is you're like, I got an extra 5 minutes. I'll read 2 verses. I'll read 3 verses. But then on the days where you don't have time, you know that if you've accomplished that one verse, then you still have that snowball. The snowball is still building. It's still the momentum. So starting micro, small. Not giving yourself a huge goal, but starting small, knowing that that is going to snowball into something bigger, right? But you don't set yourself up for failure. You set yourself up for success. So that's one technique, right? So if you know you and you're like, I am kind of like an all or nothing kind of person and I can do this and this is the way that I've changed my habits in the past. I'm just struggling with this other thing. A second technique is you can go with the philosophy of eat that frog. So I love this book, right? So it's a book that's called Eat That Frog. And the philosophy behind Eat That Frog is every day you do the hardest thing it is for you to do first, right? So I actually used to use this philosophy and like I said, these techniques can really be used on so many different things. I used to use this technique when I owned a physical studio, right? So one of the things that before I was able to get a receptionist, I had to call a lot of people back, and that was not my favorite part of the job, right? Just calling, giving people information, right? So that wasn't my favorite part of the job. So what I would do is I learned how to eat that frog. I would make sure that was the first thing I did in the morning, because so here's the philosophy behind Eat That Frog. The philosophy behind Eat That Frog is the author says, if every day you woke up and you ate the biggest, ugliest, slimiest frog that you could find, you can go about the rest of your day knowing that the worst thing that you had to do is already done, right? Because everything becomes easier after that. So that is the philosophy behind Eat That Frog. So how do you apply that in a practical term? So as I said in my business, the way that I applied it is that the one thing that I like to do the least, I made sure I did it first. Because after I did that, everything else was easy. And easy is all relative. Another way that you can apply it is if you really hate exercising, do it first thing in the morning. Do not delay. Don't tell yourself that you're going to do it on your lunch break or you're going to do it when you get home. You do it first thing in the morning. When I teach fitness boot camp, it's at 5:30 a.m. And we had this philosophy that we got up and exercised before our brain figured out what our body was doing, right? So it was just make it automated, right? So if exercise is something that you absolutely hate doing, don't procrastinate in your day. Eat the frog. Get it done first thing before you do anything else. I love exercise, but I still do it in the morning because I know that this is where the bulk of my energy needs to go, and I want to make sure that I am doing it in a way that nothing interrupts with that. Every morning I wake up and my husband is like, "Where are you going? What you doing?" I'm like, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the gym. The other day, he was like, "Going to the gym?" I was like, "Yep." When I wake up, I have two priorities, and then everything takes second fiddle to them. That is, I wake up, I pray, I work out. That is just automated. That's what I have to do. Those are the two most important things that I have to do in the morning. The two biggest things that really sets my day up for success. So whatever that is for you, make sure that if it's difficult, that you're doing it first thing in the morning. You eat that frog. So third philosophy, if you want to create a habit and you want to set yourself up for success. So this is kind of like the habit of being productive, of getting stuff done, right? So this would be the do one thing. So it's a little combination of the two previous, whereas every day you're setting yourself, I personally like the philosophy, they're both based on the same thing. I like the philosophy of setting myself up with 3 things. If you get these 3 things accomplished during the day, or that one big thing, then everything else, it can get done on another day. And that's really important because we tend to have this philosophy of we have to create this super long list of things to do. I got to remember to do this. I got to remember to make a doctor's appointment for the kids. I got to remember to go grocery shopping. I got to remember to make sure I return the shoes that I was supposed to return last week. I got to make sure that I do my taxes, which was supposed to be done yesterday, by the way. Or on the 15th for people in America. So if you missed it, better make sure you get your extension. I gotta call this person back. So you have this whole list of things. And I encourage you to write a list. Write things down. Not when you wake up in the morning, you write it down the night before. And when you write those things down, you choose the 3 things that have to be done that day, that cannot be delayed. If you are trying to build a habit in something, that thing must be one of your 3. So if I am trying to build a habit of exercising on a daily basis, meditating on a daily basis, keeping up with my finances on a daily basis, for me, finishing my book, finishing it on a daily basis, that's always going to be one of those 3, right? I'm going to write for at least 1 hour. I'm going to exercise for at least 1 hour, right? Whatever those things is. And then what are the important things that cannot be delayed? One of those should be your habits. The other ones can be your to-dos. So that's another way for you to develop habits and develop the habit of being productive in achieving those habits. So that would be another option. So when we create habits, here is the most important part of achieving them. Whether your habit is a lifestyle habit or whether it is being productive to achieve the goal, right? It sounds like a cliche, but it's actually been proven by science. Keep your eyes on the prize. Know what your ultimate goal is and keep your eyes on the prize and focused on that thing. So they did a research study and they were specifically actually looking at exercise and what is it that can make it more achievable and people like it a little bit more. And what they did was they told people, we want you to walk from here to there. They showed them where the finish line is. And they took one group of people and they said, and we want you to keep your eye on the finish line the entire time, right? Keep your eye on that finish line. The other group of people, they said, we want you to walk from here to there. There's the finish line. But look around as you normally do. If you decide to notice the trees, the trash can, whatever you do, just keep about your gaze in the normal way. People who kept their eyes on the goal, they actually had a perception of it being 30% easier. They actually walked faster. They were able to achieve the goal and reported it to be less strenuous than people who just had a normal glaze and they were looking at everything that was around them. we can take this and we can certainly apply it to what you're trying to achieve, right? If you have a goal, you keep your eye on the prize. Every day that you wake up, you want to make sure that your eye is still on a goal. If that goal is every day, I want to open a business in 6 months, so every day I'm going to do something that is going to be about getting that business off of the ground, right? That's one of those to-dos. One of those to-dos. That is really important. We so often just get distracted by everything around us, chasing every shiny little thing. And it's so easy to get distracted now because we have social media, right? So you can say, well, I'm going to go and read the news, or I'm going to log onto social media and I'm going to, research this part of eating, or this part of meditation, or this part of, I'm going to do some research. But then an ad pops up. Like, ads are my thing. That really distracts me. Instagram knows me far too well. I'm telling you. I am the reason people market on Instagram. Me alone. It's a really bad habit I got. Instagram shopping. But that being said, this is why you have to have your eye on the prize. So you're not distracted by the headphones that pop up, the new fitness equipment, the really cool indestructible shoes. I'm going to give me a pair of those. All of those things that pop up in your view that is going to distract you, right? It's going to distract you. When you keep your eye on the prize, you stay focused on what your goal is, you are writing it down. But here is, so the last thing that tip that I'm going to give you that is going to make change and you becoming the person that you want to be and achieving the habits that you want to have, the most important thing is for you to visualize it. That is the key for you to achieving it. And when I say visualize it, one, you have to decide with certainty that this is what I want. I want to be a best-selling author. Our brain is so powerful that it actually does not know the difference between what we imagine and what we actually experience. So choose times throughout your day that you're actually closing your eyes and you are visualizing what it feels like to be and to have those habits. So if you want to be, the greatest, most fit person that runs marathons, what would that feel like? When you finish your first marathon, can you imagine to yourself, what is the weather going to be like? Right? Imagine it. What will the crowds be like? How detailed? What are the things that you're going to smell along the path? What are the things that you're going to see along the path of your marathon? Right? When you get to the end, are you going to see your friends? Are you going to see your family? Use time to imagine. As adults, we don't daydream enough. And daydreaming is essential for you to achieving your goal. You have to imagine it, because once you imagine it, your brain thinks it is reality. And once you have it in your mind as reality, then it becomes reality, right? So you want to make sure that you're taking time to not just set a vision, but envision your vision. Those are my tips for you for creating lasting change and making that change less painful. So we are at the end of our show, and I want to thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Mornings with Mubaraka on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Mubaraka Ibrahim, and I will talk to you next week Make sure you tune in, same bat time, same bat channel, and go about your week to be a voice and not an echo.